The mansion felt like a place made of ice. Every room was big, beautiful, and expensive, but still empty, cold, and without a real heartbeat. No laughter, no warm voices, nothing living except the soft echo of footsteps in long halls. Mr. Sterling walked through this silence like he always did, his face hard, his eyes sharp, the expression of a man who owned everything except peace. He had returned from yet another long meeting with doctors and therapists, meetings that always ended the same way: no progress, no breakthrough, no understanding of his son. Liam, his autistic son, had locked himself in his room again. He often needed space, and the mansion had plenty of it, but somehow it never helped him feel safe. The child's world was different, deeper, more sensitive, and the loud world outside frightened him. Every day felt like a battle between noise and calm almost never won. Mr. Sterling reached Liam's door. He expected silence, the kind that wrapped the boy like a blanket. But this time there was sound, a soft humming, a melody, gentle, warm, a sound that did not belong in this cold place. Mr. Sterling stopped, confused. No therapist had made Liam react. No nanny had stayed more than a week. No maid had ever dared enter his room without permission. So who was inside? He pushed the door open slowly, ready to scold whoever stood there, but the words died in his throat. Inside the room, the lights were dim. The curtains were half closed, letting in a thin, peaceful ray of sunlight. The room looked different, softer somehow, as if someone had touched it with warmth. And there, on the floor beside Liam's bed, knelt the new maid, Mara. She had only been working in the house for 2 days, yet she knelt with the calm confidence of someone who understood silence better than noise. Mara's dark hands moved slowly, gently guiding Liam's small hands along a soft blanket. She hummed a tune in a low voice, steady like the sea at night. Liam, usually tense and curled into himself, was sitting close to her. His eyes, which were often wide with fear or closed tightly in discomfort, were half open, soft, listening. Mr. Sterling felt his heartbeat stumble. He had never seen his son like this, not relaxed, not trusting, not leaning toward another person. Liam's shoulders were not tight. His breathing was not fast. He looked almost calm. It was impossible. It made no sense, but it was happening in front of him. Mara didn't even look up at first. Her focus was on Liam, matching her breathing to his. Slowly in, slowly out. She was helping him find rhythm, safety, the kind he never felt in this huge house. Mr. Sterling took a step into the room. The floor let out a tiny creak, and Liam flinched. But Mara reached out gently, placing her hand near Liam's, guiding him back, not grabbing, not forcing, just offering a calm presence. Something so simple, yet something Liam desperately needed. Mr. Sterling opened his mouth to speak, to demand an explanation, but the moment he did, something unbelievable happened. Liam lifted his head. The boy's voice had been silent for months. He avoided speaking even when he wanted something. But now, in the soft, warm moment Mara had created, he whispered one tiny word: "Stay." The word was small, fragile, but somehow strong enough to shake the entire mansion. Mr. Sterling felt it strike him in a place he didn't know was still alive. It wasn't addressed to him. It wasn't meant for the man who owned the house. It was for Mara, this woman he barely noticed, this maid who assumed was like all the others, this stranger who somehow reached his son's heart in minutes when experts had failed for years. A strange feeling filled the billionaire's chest, something tight, uncomfortable, hope mixed with fear. Confusion mixed with the terrible truth that maybe he had been doing everything wrong. Liam had spoken. Liam had trusted. Liam had reached out. But he hadn't reached out to his father. Mara finally lifted her eyes, meeting Mr. Sterling's gaze. She didn't look afraid. She didn't look guilty. She looked calm, steady, as if she understood the room better than anyone else. The quiet moment stretched, full of questions that none of them dared speak. And then, without warning, Liam reached his hand toward Mara again, seeking the comfort he never sought from anyone else. The room wasn't silent anymore, but the silence that broke was only the beginning of everything about to change.
Mr. Sterling stood frozen in the doorway, still trying to understand what he had just seen. His son, who never allowed anyone near him, was holding on to Mara as if she were the only safe thing in the world. Liam's whisper, that small word, stay, kept echoing in his mind. It was impossible to ignore. It shook him harder than any business problem he had ever faced. Mara slowly stopped humming and looked up at Mr. Sterling. Her expression was calm, not scared or nervous. She didn't act like someone who had broken a rule. She acted like someone who understood exactly what she was doing. Liam held the edge of her sleeve tightly, his small fingers trembling a little, afraid she might leave. "How did you do that?" Mr. Sterling finally asked. His voice was not angry. It wasn't even loud. It was soft and confused, like a man waking up from a long dream and not knowing what was real anymore. Mara didn't answer right away. She looked at Liam first. She rested her hand gently on his arm and whispered, "It's okay. I'm here." She waited until his breathing slowed again, until he was calm enough to sit quietly. Only then did she stand up slowly. Her eyes met Mr. Sterling's. She still didn't look afraid. She looked sure of herself, confident, in a quiet, gentle way. "Sir," she said softly, "your son isn't broken." Those 4 words hit Mr. Sterling harder than anything else she could have said. He blinked, confused and offended at the same time. For years he had listened to doctors, specialists, and expensive therapists who used complicated words to explain why Liam struggled. They talked about symptoms, behaviors, and problems, but never once did anyone say something as simple and human as what Mara had just said. "He's overwhelmed," she continued, her voice steady. "Liam feels too much. The world is loud for him, too fast, too bright. But he isn't broken." Mr. Sterling felt something tightening in his chest. It was not anger. It was closer to fear. Maybe guilt. Maybe the painful realization that this Maid, a woman he had barely noticed, understood his son better than he did. He opened his mouth to speak, but a small tug on Mara's sleeve stopped everything. Liam looked up, his eyes wide and worried. His voice was barely a whisper, but it was clear enough. "Don't let him shout at you." The room went silent again. But this silence was different. It was heavy, sharp, like a painful truth floating in the air. Mr. Sterling felt his stomach drop. Did his own son think he was going to yell? Was that how Liam saw him? A man who shouted instead of listened? A man who scared his own child? He tried to speak, but no words came out. Mara knelt beside Liam again, brushing a gentle hand across his back, and said, "It's okay. He's not angry." Liam looked unsure, but he leaned into her touch anyway. He trusted her, completely. Mr. Sterling watched with a strange mix of jealousy and heartbreak. His own son never came to him like that, never reached for his hand, never looked at him with trust. For the first time in a long while, he wished he understood his child, really understood him, not through reports, meetings, or medical papers, but the way Mara did, through simple, patient kindness. "I'm not going to shout," Mr. Sterling finally said quietly. The words felt strange in his mouth, unfamiliar, as if he hadn't spoken gently in years. Liam looked at him for one brief moment, studying his face, almost testing the truth behind his words. Then he looked away again, resting his head lightly on Mara's shoulder. Mr. Sterling felt the sting of that small rejection. It was gentle, but it hurt. It told him exactly how distant he had been, how cold, how unreachable he had become in his own home. Mara looked up at him again. "He needs safety," she said softly. "He needs someone who doesn't rush him, someone who understands when to be quiet." Her voice was not blaming, it was simply honest. But honesty can cut deeper than anger. Mr. Sterling swallowed hard. For the first time, he didn't know what to say. He was a billionaire, a man who could buy anything, solve anything, win every battle. But this soft, trembling child and the patient woman comforting him was something money could not command. He stepped back slowly, feeling more lost than he ever had in his life. Behind him, he heard Liam whisper again, this time even softer, as if talking only to Mara. "Don't leave me." That whisper was the final blow, a painful truth he could not escape. His son trusted her more than him. And for the first time, Mr. Sterling realized he didn't just want answers. He needed them.
Mr. Sterling asked Mara to stay after her shift, but he did not say it in his usual strict, sharp voice. This time, his tone was quieter, unsure, almost human. Mara felt the difference immediately, and though she was tired, she nodded politely and followed him to the kitchen. It was the only room in the mansion that felt a little warm, mostly because it smelled of tea and freshly baked bread. She sat down at the table, her hands folded in her lap, waiting for him to speak. But Mr. Sterling didn't start talking right away. He stood near the counter for a moment, thinking, as if he didn't know how to begin. It was strange seeing a man like him hesitate. He was used to controlling everything, business, meetings, people, but now he looked like someone searching for the right words. Finally, he said, "I want to understand what happened today." His voice was low, carrying something more than curiosity, something closer to need. Mara didn't rush to answer. She just nodded gently. "Ask me what you want to know, sir." "How did you calm him?" he asked quietly. "How did you reach him when no one else could?" Her eyes softened, and after a moment of silence, she began speaking about a part of her life she rarely shared with anyone. "I had a younger brother. His name was Noah. He was autistic too." Mr. Sterling blinked. He had not expected that. Mara continued, her voice soft but steady. "Our mother died when I was 19. After that, it was just me and Noah. He was sensitive to sounds, lights, people talking too fast, smells he didn't like. The world scared him easily, but he also understood things deeply. He loved music, soft textures, rhythm, safe hands." As she spoke, her fingers gently touched the table, tracing invisible shapes, remembering. "When he was overwhelmed," she said, "I learned to help him breathe slowly. I learned to match my rhythm to his. I learned that shouting, rushing, or forcing only made things worse. He needed someone to be patient, someone to wait with him until he felt safe again." Mr. Sterling listened carefully, absorbing every word. He felt something twist in his chest as he imagined a young Mara taking care of her little brother all alone. "I watched Liam today. I saw the fear in his hands. His breathing wasn't steady. His eyes were moving too fast. He needed calm. So I sat on the floor and hummed, because soft sounds helped Noah. And I talked slowly, because quick words confuse the mind when it is scared. It wasn't magic, sir, just understanding. Her explanation was simple, yet it felt like a missing piece of a puzzle he had never been able to solve. "But how?" he asked. "How did you see all that in a few minutes?" Mara smiled sadly. "When you grow up with someone like Noah, you learn to see things the world ignores." Silence filled the room, not the cold, empty silence that usually lived in the mansion. This silence was different, full of meaning, almost warm. Mr. Sterling opened his mouth to ask another question, but suddenly the mansion alarm blared loudly, piercing through the calm moment. A sharp, urgent sound that made Mara jump and made Mr. Sterling's eyes widen in fear. Heavy footsteps echoed down the hallway, and one of the guards rushed into the kitchen, breathing fast. "Sir," the guard shouted, "it's Liam! He's missing!" The words hit Mr. Sterling like a punch to the chest. For 1 second, his entire world shattered. His breath caught. Everything inside him froze, and then panic flooded through him. "What do you mean he's missing?" he demanded, voice shaking in a way he couldn't hide. "He was in the playroom," the guard said urgently. "We left for less than a minute. When we came back, he was gone. The outer door to the garden is open." Mara's heart jumped into her throat. She didn't wait for orders. She ran, fast. Her chair almost fell behind her as she pushed past the guard and rushed toward the back exit. Mr. Sterling followed, his steps frantic, fear gripping him harder than anything he had ever felt. They reached the yard, the night air cold on their skin. The garden was huge, dark, full of twisting paths and tall hedges, a place where a frightened child could easily get lost. Drops of dew sparkled on the grass, and there, small, hurried footprints. Mara pointed instantly. "He went this way." Mr. Sterling felt his heart pounding, praying they weren't too late. The garden swallowed the two of them as they began to search, and the mansion behind them stood silent once more, its peace shattered by the fear of losing the one child it never truly understood. And the night felt heavy, holding its breath, waiting for what would happen next.
They followed the small footprints across the cold grass, moving quickly but carefully. The night was quiet except for the soft crunch of leaves under their shoes. The garden behind the mansion was massive, almost like a small forest, filled with tall hedges, winding paths, and dark corners where shadows looked like moving shapes. It was beautiful in the day, but at night it felt dangerous, especially for a frightened child like Liam. Mara walked ahead, her eyes focused on the ground. She didn't waste time panicking. She didn't stop to think. She just moved with purpose, her heart beating fast but her mind staying calm. She knew that in moments like this, panic could destroy precious seconds. Mr. Sterling, however, was shaking. His breath was uneven, his face pale. This wasn't like losing a business deal. This wasn't like a meeting going wrong. This was his son, his little boy who already struggled with the world. The idea of Liam being alone in the dark, scared, maybe crying, cut into him like a knife. They reached the entrance of the hedge maze, the part of the garden that even adults avoided at night. The hedges were tall, almost as high as the mansion windows, standing thick and green like walls. The path inside twisted like a puzzle. One wrong turn and a person could wander for hours. Mr. Sterling stopped at the entrance, frozen with fear. He stared into the darkness of the maze, his mind racing with terrible images. What if Liam slipped? What if he hid somewhere too tight? What if he fell? What if he was crying and no one could hear him? But Mara did not hesitate for even a moment. She rushed into the maze, shouting Liam's name, but not too loudly. She kept her voice calm, steady, like she was guiding him through a nightmare. "Liam, it's me. It's Mara. I'm coming." Her voice echoed between the hedges, a soft light in the dark. Mr. Sterling finally forced himself to move. He stepped into the maze behind her, his fear pushing him forward. Every twist and turn made the air feel heavier. The paths were narrow, the hedges towering over them, and the darkness seemed to swallow their steps. "Liam!" he shouted, but his voice cracked. It didn't carry warmth, it carried fear. And Mara knew fear wasn't what Liam needed. So she kept calling gently, "Liam, follow my voice. I'm here." They moved deeper into the maze, following the small footprints that were quickly fading. Sometimes the prints were clear, sometimes they disappeared into cold patches of dirt. Sometimes Mara had to crouch, feeling the ground with her hands, searching for signs. Minutes passed, but they felt like hours. Then suddenly, a sound tore through the quiet night, a sharp, frightened cry, Liam's cry. Both of them froze for a split second, then Mara ran faster than she ever had in her life. Her heart pounded so loudly she almost couldn't hear anything else. "Liam!" she shouted, racing around a sharp corner. Mr. Sterling struggled to keep up, crashing into the hedges, desperate to reach the sound. When Mara burst into the clearing at the center of the maze, she saw him, Liam, standing at the edge of the fountain pool. The water looked black in the moonlight, deep and cold. Liam was trembling, his feet too close to the slippery stone edge. One wrong step and he would fall in. "Liam, don't move," Mara said gently, her voice soft, as if speaking to a scared bird. He turned his head sharply. His eyes were wide, filled with panic and confusion. His breathing was fast and uneven. "I want to go home," he cried, stepping backward, a dangerous step that made his heel slide. Mara's heart almost burst from fear. "It's okay," she said slowly, taking steps toward him. "I'm here now. You're not alone." But Liam shook his head, tears falling. "Too loud, too dark. I don't know the way." Mara's voice dropped to a whisper. "You don't need to know the way. I'll take you." His foot slipped again, and that moment shattered everything. Mara didn't think. She didn't wait. She lunged forward, grabbing him around the waist, just as his heel lost its grip. Her knees slammed into the stone ground, and pain shot through her legs, but she held Liam tightly, pulling him away from the edge with all her strength. Liam clung to her with shaking arms, burying his face in her shoulder as he sobbed. Mr. Sterling arrived seconds later, breathless, terrified, staring at the scene, his son safe in the arms of the maid who had just risked everything for him. And in that single moment, he realized something with frightening clarity. Mara had done what he never could. She had saved his son, not only from the fountain, but from fear itself. And nothing in the world would ever be the same again.
Mara held Liam tightly as they walked back toward the mansion, her arms trembling from the weight of fear, relief, and pain, all mixed together. Liam's small hands were clenched around her shirt, as if letting go meant falling again. His face was buried in her shoulder, warm tears soaking through the fabric. He was shaking, exhausted and frightened, but he did not want to release her, not for a second. Mr. Sterling walked beside them, but a little behind, watching with a heavy heart. His eyes kept moving from his son's face to Mara's scraped arms. Her skin was bruised from pulling Liam away from the fountain, and there were angry red scratches along her palms. She hid the pain well, but he could see it. Each scrape felt like a wound to him, too. When they entered the mansion, the warm lights made the scene even more heartbreaking. Liam was still clinging to Mara, refusing to go to anyone else. His father reached out gently, hoping to help, But the moment Liam sensed movement, he tightened his grip around Mara like she was his only safe place in the world. "It's okay," Mara whispered, rubbing his back slowly. "You're safe now. Nobody is going to let anything happen to you." Her voice was calm despite everything she had just gone through. She walked him to the sofa and sat down carefully, holding him until his breathing softened and he was no longer shaking. Mr. Sterling stood close, feeling useless. He had never felt so powerless before. In meetings, he was the one with answers. In business, he was the one everyone feared. But here with his son, he was lost. He cleared his throat. You could have been hurt." Mara looked up at him. Her face showed exhaustion, but her eyes were steady. "I'm fine, sir." "You're not fine," he replied, his voice sharper than he meant. "You're bleeding." She glanced down at her palms as if noticing the injuries for the first time. "It's nothing." But to him, it wasn't nothing. Her arms were bruised purple, her palms torn, and her knees probably hurt from hitting the stone ground. She had risked herself to save his son, without thinking, without hesitation. "Why would you do that?" he asked, his voice quieter this time. Mara looked down at Liam, still holding on to her, his head resting on her shoulder as if he belonged there. "She had needed someone right then," she said simply. "There wasn't time to think about myself." Her answer struck him deeply. She said it like it was the most ordinary thing in the world, like anyone would do the same. But he knew that was not true. Many people cared only for themselves. Many people would freeze, panic, or step back. But Mara had run forward. Mr. Sterling felt something sharp twist inside him. Guilt, gratitude, fear, all tangled together. He saw how gently she held his son, how naturally she guided him back from panic to safety. And for the first time, he realized how long Liam had been living without this kind of understanding. Liam finally loosened his grip, his breathing returning to a soft rhythm. He didn't speak, but he leaned against Mara's side, like he trusted her completely. Mara stroked his hair once before looking up at Mr. Sterling. "He's okay now. He just needs rest." Mr. Sterling nodded slowly, but his eyes stayed on her bruised arms. The sight made something inside him ache. He wanted to help, say something, do something, but he didn't know how. Feelings were not his strength. As Mara stood up carefully with Liam, she winced but tried to hide it. Mr. Sterling noticed immediately. "You're hurt," she replied softly. "It was worth it." That answer felt heavier than anything he had heard in years. Mara walked toward the hallway, guiding Liam to his room. Mr. Sterling followed silently, watching the way she moved, calm, protective, brave. Something about her presence filled the cold mansion with warmth he had never felt before. But as they turned the corner, neither of them noticed the shadow watching from the upper staircase. A tall figure stood hidden in the dim light, arms crossed, eyes narrowed. He had seen everything: the rescue, the way Liam clung to Mara, the way Mr. Sterling looked at her with new respect. The figure stepped back into the shadows, a cold anger twisting across his face. This was not over. As Mara disappeared down the hall with Liam, she did not realize that someone in the house did not like her growing importance. And Mr. Sterling did not yet know that danger was beginning to gather right inside his own home. The next morning, the mansion felt tense, as if something heavy was hiding in the air. Mara arrived quietly, her hands still bandaged, her steps slow but steady. She expected to start cleaning like always, but a guard approached her and said, "Mr. Sterling wants to see you in his office." Her heart tightened. She had no idea why he wanted her there so early. She walked down the long hallway,
each step echoing loudly. When she reached the office, the door was slightly open. Mr. Sterling stood inside, not behind his desk like usual, but near the window, holding a tablet in his hand. He didn't look angry, but he didn't look calm either. He looked worried. "Mara," he said, turning to her, "we need to talk." She stepped inside slowly. "Is something wrong, sir?" He held up the tablet. "Someone recorded you." "Recorded me? When?" Mr. Sterling tapped the screen and showed her. The video began with grainy footage, her sitting beside Liam, humming softly, guiding his hands, comforting him as he rocked back and forth. Then another clip showed her running into the maze. Another showed her pulling Liam away from the fountain. The angles were strange, high up like from a hidden camera. Mara's heart dropped. I didn't know there were cameras in those places." "There shouldn't be," Mr. Sterling said sharply. "Not in those areas. These recordings were not for safety. Someone placed a device there intentionally." The fear inside her twisted with confusion. "But why?" Mr. Sterling's jaw tightened. "To use it against you." He showed her the next screen, an email draft. The subject line read, "Proof the maid is manipulating the boy." The message below was cruel, accusing Mara of pretending to care for Liam to gain sympathy, money, and power in the household. The email was filled with lies, twisting everything she had done out of kindness into something dark. Mara covered her mouth, shocked. Who would do this? Before Mr. Sterling could answer, the office door burst open. His cousin, Victor, stormed inside with an angry face, pointing at Mara. "I knew it. She's faking everything. She wants the boy to depend on her so she can control you. You're being fooled." Mara stepped back. His voice was loud, too loud and filled with hate. Mr. Sterling glared at his cousin. "Enough, Victor." "No," Victor snapped. "You're blind. She's using the child's weakness to get close to you. I'm trying to protect our family from being tricked by some maid." He didn't finish. A small voice interrupted all the shouting. "Stop." Everyone turned. Liam stood in the doorway. His hair was messy, and he was hugging a soft blanket, but his eyes were steady, focused in a way they rarely were. Victor blinked at him. "Liam, go back to your room. This is grown-up business." Liam shook his head slowly. "No." Then he pointed at Victor with a trembling little finger. "You are the bad man." The room went completely still. Victor's face turned red. "What did you say?" Liam took a small step closer to Mara, holding on to her sleeve. "You hurt her with your words. You want her gone. She helps me. You don't." Mara's eyes softened, but she didn't speak. She placed a gentle hand on Liam's shoulder, feeling how much courage it took for him to say those words. Victor scoffed. "Are you listening to a scared kid? He doesn't know what he's saying." Mr. Sterling stepped between Victor and the children, his voice cold and sharp. "He knows exactly what he's saying." Victor froze. Mr. Sterling's eyes, usually calm and distant, were filled with something powerful. "You installed secret cameras. You recorded private moments. You twisted them into lies, and you tried to destroy the only person who helps my son." Victor opened his mouth to defend himself, but Mr. Sterling cut him off. "I'm done with you. Pack your things and get out of this house today." Victor stared at him, shocked. "You're choosing her over your own blood?" "I'm choosing the truth, and I'm choosing my son." Victor left the office in angry silence, slamming the door behind him. When the room was quiet again, Liam tugged on Mr. Sterling's sleeve. "Dad, don't let her go." Mr. Sterling looked at Mara. Her eyes were full of questions. His were full of answers, and it was clear this moment would change everything.
Mr. Sterling stood silent for a long moment after Victor slammed the door behind him. The office felt strangely quiet, as if all the noise, anger, and fear had suddenly dissolved, leaving only the truth behind. Liam still held on to Mara's sleeve, staring up at his father with worried eyes.
His small hand was shaking. He had used so much courage, more than anyone ever expected from him, and now he was afraid of what would happen next. Mr. Sterling slowly knelt beside his son, lowering himself to Liam's height. It was something he had never done before. He placed a gentle hand on Liam's back, not forcing a hug, just offering a calm touch. "I'm not letting her go," he said softly. "I promise." Liam blinked, then nodded slowly, as if accepting the answer deep inside his heart. He moved closer to Mara, leaning against her side again. She stroked his hair gently, her movements full of care. She had no idea how much this boy had changed her in just days, or how much she had changed the entire mansion. Mr. Sterling looked up at Mara. "Thank you," he said quietly. The words were simple, but coming from him they felt heavy and sincere. Mara lowered her eyes. "I only did what anyone with a heart would do. That's the difference. Not everyone has a heart like yours." For a moment the room felt warm, something that rarely happened in the mansion. But life had one more twist waiting, something none of them saw coming. Later that evening, Mr. Sterling asked Mara to meet him in the living room. Liam was asleep after a long, emotional day. The house was quiet. The night sky was dark and peaceful outside the big windows. Mara entered the room carefully. Her bandaged hands were still hurting, but she ignored the pain. "You wanted to see me, sir?" Mr. Sterling stood near the fireplace, holding a small black box. When Mara saw it, her heart skipped. It looked expensive, like something important. He took a slow breath. "I realized something today. I have everything money can buy. Houses, cars, power. Yet none of that could help my son. None of that could reach him." Mara listened silently, unsure where this was going. "You did something priceless," he continued. "You touched his heart, and somehow, you touched mine too." Mara looked down quickly, not trusting her voice. He opened the black box. Inside was a key. A simple key, but with a golden edge that reflected the light softly. "I want you to stay in this house, not just as a maid, not just as an employee, but as someone important to Liam, and important to this home." Mara stared at the key, shocked. "Sir, I don't understand." "This house was full of cold walls, but you brought warmth. You brought safety. You brought love, something I forgot how to give." Her hands trembled. "Are you asking me to be Liam's caretaker?" "More than that," he said gently. "I'm asking you to be part of this family." Her breath caught. She didn't know if she was dreaming or awake. She had always come from simple places, simple homes, where people supported each other through love, not money. Becoming part of a billionaire's world never existed in her dreams, but here she was. Tears filled her eyes. "Sir, I don't know if I'm worthy of that." Mr. Sterling stepped closer. "You saved my son. You protected him. You understood him. And you taught me something I thought I didn't need." Mara wiped her tears carefully. "And what is that?" "That the richest man is not the one who has everything. It's the one who learns how to love." The word stabbed deep, revealing the truth he had avoided for years. He was powerful, feared, respected, yet deeply empty. It took a humble maid and an innocent boy to show him what truly mattered. Mara held the key with trembling fingers. "If you allow me," she said softly, "I'll stay, not because of the house, not because of the money, but because Liam needs someone who understands him, and I need someone who teaches me." Just then, a small voice came from the stairs. "Dad?" They both turned. Liam stood there sleepily, holding his blanket, looking at the two people who changed his world. He walked down the steps slowly and hugged both of them without a word. It was the first time he hugged his father on his own. Mr. Sterling closed his eyes, overwhelmed. Maris smiled through her tears, holding Liam close, and at that moment the mansion finally felt alive. Suddenly, it wasn't the giant cold house of a billionaire. It was a home, a place filled with warmth, a place where a lonely man learned love, where a scared child found safety, and where a humble maid discovered that sometimes the biggest change happens not through money, but through kindness. The shocking twist was simple but powerful. The billionaire thought he was saving the maid's job, but in truth, she was the one who saved his heart.